We talk a lot at Yahoo Finance and nationally about the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, but who better to hear about what's really happening than men and women who actually are having to navigate this process? Among them are Paul and Pat Ryan. They own 4 restaurants in the Philadelphia area. You may know them: PJ Ryan's Pub, Smokey Joe's, the original Smokey Joe's back from 1952, also Ryan's Pub. Let's begin this with Paul. You have had to navigate getting the PPP loan, and one, it's not so simple to get it, but two, what do you do with the money after you do get it, if you get it, Paul?
Exactly right, Adam. We've applied to all 4 places, and so far we've been approved for 3, and we expect to be funded soon. Now, the 3 that we got approved for, they went through smaller banks. One was Victory Bank, and the other is Franklin Mint Credit Corporation. The 4th place was through PNC, which is a much larger bank. We haven't been approved, and we haven't heard anything from that bank yet. Now, when we do get the money, that's a question. When can we open up? When can we start bringing back employees to have them work to fulfill the requirements of the PPP?
And that question, of course, is dependent on your state and reopening. And I know Pennsylvania is on track to try to reopen in the month of May. So, Pat, are you in pretty constant communication with your employees? And are you guys able to make plans yet for reopening?
Well, it's hard to make a plan so far because we really haven't found out what phase bars and restaurants will be in. I assume that we'll be somewhere in phase 2, maybe phase 3. So we might not be able to open up the bars for 3 or 4 more weeks. We are doing some takeout at each location. Not a lot. I mean, it has a couple people working, but certainly most of the staff is just waiting and texting all the time. When are we going to open?
Paul, I'm curious, once you do open, for instance, Texas is limiting capacity to 25% of total capacity. Can a restaurant or a bar truly operate with just 25% of capacity?
Well, I think it all depends on your overhead. From what I understand, some of the restaurants in Texas are not going to bother opening with only 25%. So they probably have a huge payroll in the kitchen, which they can't cover with the 25% of your gross. So I think it all depends on what your overhead is, what your payroll is, your rent, your expenses. And I can't imagine 25% in Pennsylvania. I'm going to assume 50%. With social distancing, how we're going to do that in a bar, I don't know. We'll have to get direction from the government.
Pat and Paul, we had a chance to talk yesterday at your restaurant, and we talked about sort of the history of your restaurant. You're on the 3rd generation now. Your grandparents had to deal with the Spanish flu, so you've got some context on the bumps that come along with this restaurant business. Where do you put these challenges in the long history of your restaurant business?
Well, obviously, I don't think anybody in our generation has ever seen anything like this, a shutdown for this long, and we're dealing with it. You just have to manage every situation as it comes up, and hopefully it's over soon. And I think that's for all restaurants and businesses, because the longer it goes, the bigger the hole is going to be for people to dig out of. PPP.
Pat, finish that thought. I interrupted you.
Yeah, regardless of the PPP, I mean, that helps with the payroll going on, but as time goes on, people are going to fall farther and farther behind.
Paul, as we wrap up, one of the crazy jobs I had in my youth was a dishwasher at Danton's Diner in Old Orchard Beach, Maine. It's a tough business, even in good times. So what do you expect to happen? Are we going to see a lot of restaurants close and new people come into these spaces, or do you think most are going to be able to figure this out?
Well, I spoke earlier today with somebody who works for a national company that follows restaurants, and his company is planning on 25% of the restaurants in America not opening again, completely shut down, which is shocking. But like Pat said, I think it's going to be a wash in the next 6 months. We'll see who survives and who doesn't, but it's going to take at least a year to get out of this hole, I believe.
Okay. Pat and Paul, we appreciate your being here on Yahoo Finance. Again, Paul and Pat, Ryan are restaurant owners from the Philadelphia area, and we wish you all the best.